Hi everybody, I'm back again today to do another Grail Quest review by request. Had a new subscriber ask me if I would do another one, and actually that's one of the very few times anyone's ever asked me to cover anything in particular, so yeah, why not? I love the Grail Quest gamebook adventure series. J.H. Brennan wrote these in the mid-1980s. If you know me, you know that's my favorite time period. The publisher was Armada, in case you're wondering. It's a company that is long gone now. Anyway, I've already made videos on Book 1, Castle of Darkness, and Book 2, The Den of Dragons, so feel free to check those out on my channel if you need a better context for what follows. I'm not going to cover the basic game mechanics here. I already did that in the first video. However, I will highlight any differences or new features found in this third installment of the series. Okay, so that brings us to the Gateway of Doom. This one is different from the others. It's the hardest one thus far, I think, to characterize and to evaluate from a reviewer's perspective. I think you'll understand why as we go along, but let's just start with the setup. Merlin introduces you, also known as Pip, the main character, as somewhat of a hero. Pip is more of a veteran at this point and now has notoriety across the realm, but also a new burden to uphold this reputation. Pip the Wizard Basher, Pip the Dragon Slayer, they call you. So when the next crisis arises, you are summoned, of course, to right all the wrongs and save the day once again. There are many running jokes in these books, not the least of which are the ones surrounding the initial meetups between Pip and Merlin. And this is where the nature of the adventure gets introduced and where Pip gets outfitted for the mission. It's sort of like James Bond meeting Q, except that it's in a fantasy universe. Merlin's lair is always magical and interesting, but you do get something different here. It's not his crystal fortress of solitude-like setup as in the last book. By the way, if you haven't watched any of my previous reviews, I try to keep spoilers to a minimum. My videos are more like movie trailers with some teasers, some details, but nothing I hope that will leave you not wanting more. And so the story for this one is actually rather sparse. Merlin and Pip remote view a round table meeting of King Arthur's knights through a crystal ball. They see a tumultuous scene. Everyone is up in arms over a general malaise that has overtaken the entire realm since the arrival and subsequent defeat of the Brass Dragon in Book 2. Its origin is the lingering problem. Where did it come from? There are dissenting opinions and no consensus as to how to proceed. Merlin's explanation is particularly troubling. He believes there is an open gate somewhere in a parallel world known as the Kingdom of the Dead that radiates negativity to the extent that dark forces are now able to cross over into Avalon. It only seems inevitable that some other terrible monster will come to pass through this open portal. Close the gate, they all say, but how? They're just knights after all. They aren't magicians. Therefore, an intervention by Merlin and his young assistant is called for once again. And after a brief audience with King Arthur himself, Pip gets the royal blessing to find the gateway to the ghastly kingdom of the dead and to close the portal. It's all rather short and sweet this time around. It's an effective introduction. Of course, the next step is for Merlin to prepare Pip, and this is where we begin to see some differences and new features to the base game. I was impressed by this. I didn't think Brennan added core game elements in the third book. I don't remember this being a thing, but it's cool, especially when you read all these in sequence. You can actually see the game evolve. There are more spells. Pip can use 5 new ones to start. They're weird. Shall we say some of the stranger offerings you might find in level 2 D&D Magic. They cost life points to cast, and you still have to roll to see if they go off successfully. There's now a more developed, detailed system to value any magical or prosaic items against gold pieces. Like, it seems money is more important now, not unlike the earlier editions of D&D that had extensive tables to convert coppers to silvers to gold pieces to experience points. Also, Book 3 introduces a better concept of encumbrance or speed, you could say. You have to make a roll, and the result pertains to how many items you can carry and still be agile. You can overload yourself, but if you do, you actually give up attack rounds in combat, so it's not very advisable. There is a very large list of brand new items that you can choose to take with you, and these are provided by Merlin. So many of them are absolutely non-intuitive, bizarre things that upon first glance might appear to be nothing more than red herrings. For example, there's an item, I imagine something like Boobo from the original Clash of the Titans, except it's a mechanical aardvark instead of an owl. There's a xylophone, stuff like that. In my game, I took with me an axe, blue powder, a joke book, parchment, powdered ink, a water bag, a quill, a saw, and the xylophone. So yeah, in the end, the mileage you get with some of these things may vary, that's for sure. And those are the biggest structural differences in book 3 that I noticed. So what about the overall story or adventure itself? Well, once again, you have a couple of new twists. There's no specific villain this time around to start. There's a frightful Medusa on the softcover edition. She actually made a cameo in the second book, but who's actually supposed to be the main bad guy here? Now, I always wonder, isn't any story usually only as good as the villain? Don't you need a good, heavy character to play off? Here, nothing. There's also no beautiful Stone Martin-like village map up front, as in the second book. You have no idea how to even get to wherever it is you're going. No map. How do you actually get to the ghastly kingdom of the dead? Pip even asked this question to Merlin, and his response is just classic. He says something to the effect of, hey, we're talking about the ghastly kingdom. It's got to be the worst place in the whole universe. So whenever you come to a fork or a crossroads in your travels, just keep taking the least pleasant path and eventually you'll get there. As he says, you'll know it when you see it. He casts a spell and instantaneously zaps you to a different plane of existence. It's actually pretty funny the way it plays out. What follows in the immediate wake of this send-off is not much more than a series of freakish, outlandish vignettes that seem detached from any kind of traditional story progression. For a while, there's no sense of meaningful purpose or point to it all. It's just one random event after another on an escalating scale of absurdity. I can give you a couple of examples so you have a better idea of what I'm talking about. Maybe something happens and suddenly you find yourself in the middle of an artificial lake on a tiny island, and the only thing on the island is you, a giant gorilla with a spiked baseball bat, and a solitary tree. And oh no, he's coming at you. Quick, what do? Do you jump in the lake, try to swim for shore, climb the tree, try for a friendly reaction, etc.? All the seemingly obvious insta-kill options are presented to you. Now, if you do survive, before you know it, you could miraculously find yourself in the middle of some sub-Saharan African vista with all the expected ferocious wildlife. But then something else happens, and around the very next bend in the road, it's right back to a more familiar medieval-style village. So yeah, it's a lot of silliness, and incidentally, not a lot of fighting, not a lot of opportunities for combat. It's more about interacting with strange characters and weird encounters. And at this point, I was starting to think that Book 3 wouldn't be better than the first two. Entertaining, yes, but not a better story. That is, until you arrive at this thing, which serves as a gateway to the second act, or rather the true gateway leading to the Portal of Doom. This is where everything takes off. What follows from here is a more recognizable dungeon crawl, but it's awesome. I thought it was so much fun. Finally, you learn who the bad guy is. You get an identifiable main villain. He even leaves a funny come on message for you, like come get me, sucker type of thing. I'm not going to tell you more about the end boss, but it's good. To get to him, you have to make your way through at least 3 levels of a dungeon complex. The book provides basic floor plans and everything. At first glance, they seem pretty scant. Not much to them at all, not much detail. But hold on, there's more to them than you think. More stuff actually gets revealed as you go along. All very cool. Wandering monster tables come out of nowhere, I think for the first time. It's implemented very well. There's a good variety of potential adversaries. In all of this, unforeseen factors may also limit the use of the sword, so that you may find yourself more reliant on magic. A lot of people like this about Book 3, I think. The main point I'm trying to make here is that this part of the adventure has everything. Imagine a pizza with the works, all the toppings. Traps, freaky rooms, some really gross characters, whimsical elements. As always, much like the Zork universe, it's all there. It's so entertaining to play through. The major creatures always seem to have creative, well-suited special abilities. As these rooms get cleared out and these encounters get resolved, the reader begins to feel a sense of traction and progress. So it's great stuff. One of my favorite encounters happens around mid-game when Pip enters this funhouse like Hall of Mirrors. And of course, you could probably guess what the outcome is. All of a sudden, this distorted reflection of Pip steps out of a cursed mirror, and you have to fight a doppelganger. And it even wields a corrupted copy of Excalibur Jr. It's really good. And there are more than a few of these tough opponents, memorable encounters to play out in the Gateway of Doom. And then eventually you come to the finale. The final boss is legit. Although I still say Anselm the Evil Wizard from Book 1 is the best villain so far, in my opinion, because he's a better character, he's creepier, acts more menacing. The villain here is a bit of a trash talker, but his character, I thought, wasn't as developed. He's more cartoonishly evil, but at least he does have a bit of a personality. The Brass Dragon, by comparison, didn't even talk to you, if I remember correctly. It simply attacked you on sight, even though it was rumored to be able to communicate. Anyway, I don't want to mention anything more about the climax of this adventure or how the story precisely winds up, because you have to play it out for yourself. There's a couple of details that surprised me at the end, and I just don't want to spoil them. So, all things considered, how does Book 3 rank against the previous two adventures? That's a tough one. Your character is probably going to die a lot of times, that's for sure. So, some people might find that annoying. Other than that, I can't think of any criticisms. So overall, it's really good. How good? It's hard to say because there's no significant drop-off from Book 1 to Book 3. And I think that's remarkable by itself. 1 has the best atmosphere and the best villain. 2 has the best landscape and maps to explore. And despite what I thought was a slow start, Book 3 ends up having the best dungeon component with great overall play value. And I think most people rank 3 close to the top of the series, but for me, it's really close, like really close. It might be something like out of 100, Book 1 is 90, 3, 89, 2, 88, something like that. I wouldn't argue with anyone who has a different order. So if you are interested in young adult style fantasy adventures, I recommend the Grail Quest series. You can even start with 3. I just know if you read and play through 1, you're going to want to try another one. And you won't be disappointed. They are all worthwhile. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more content coming soon.